ReadBits. Women of Reddit, what's the worst, most embarrassing, most awkward experience you've had at the gynecologist? My OBGYN is a beautiful Hispanic lady in her 40s. She always tells me that I have a beautiful vagina. It's awkward, but I kind of like it. My OBGYN is an attractive Jamaican lady. She always claims my cervix is beautiful. It makes me blush. The doctor closed the speculum in such a way that he pinched me and made me bleed. They heard me scream in the reception area. This sounds worse than when my dentist drilled my tongue. There was a tornado that touched down right in the middle of my exam. One minute I was stirruped up, and the next minute, my gyno was screaming at me to get dressed because we had to go into the basement of the medical center. I was stuck there for 2 hours with nothing to do except talk about my vagina to my gynecologist. Nothing to do except talk about my vagina. That quote made my day. When I was 15, I accidentally put a tampon in, forgetting there was one in there already. Shoved it up to the past of no return. Never experienced a gynecologist, never had sex, tight and naive as a Catholic toddler. So much embarrassing pain went on that day, and it hurt so fucking bad. Oh my gosh, I'm in med school, and on my OB-GYN rotation had a 14-year-old with the same problem. She was a foster child, and her foster mom and dad had tried to reach up and pull it out for her, use tools, etc. All around shit show. I felt so bad for the girl. Though it baffles me as to how this happens, it can't get lost or go past your cervix and the vaginal canal is not deep, but I think many people believe it can. I put the girl in stirrups, inserted a speculum into her vagina, and could easily retrieve it. But up until that point, she forgot to mention it had been lost for 5 days. The smell will stay with me forever. Daughter did this once. She had just started having a cycle and totally forgot there was one up there. After a few days, she mentioned being uncomfortable and an odor. The OBGYN had no trouble correcting the issue, but goodness, the smell was awful. My mom's friend slept around a lot, and on a drunken night, she got her tamp way up there. Weeks later, the gyne gagged while pulling it out. Gagged. Worst experience? I noticed I had some dry area off to the very side of the most sensitive area. Go in, doctor says. It looks like a form of eczema, but we should biopsy it anyways. Next, I'm getting a shot of lidocaine to the vag. They kept testing to see if I was numb, then said, it's kind of hard to get this area exactly numb because of the folds of skin. Awesome. So it sort of feels numb down there, but not really. And they decide it's good enough to go in and do the biopsy, which was really them just taking some scissors and snipping a piece of my vag off that might be close enough to be considered part of the clitoris. And I was not numb. I screamed. Then afterwards, the lidocaine decides to kick in. My husband, now ex, can't get off of work to pick me up, even though I've just had part of my vag crudely snipped off. So I had to take the bus home. And on the ride, it's bumpy and the lidocaine wears off. TLDR. I had part of my vag snipped off without being numb and felt all of it. I had a cyst on the outside of my vagina. It grew pretty big, because I didn't think anything of it until walking became nearly impossible. The only way they could get rid of it was by cutting it open and letting the pus flow out. The pus didn't flow out though, it squirted out right onto my gynecologist's face. That's disgusting yet hilarious. What was hers reaction? Delight. My gynecologist's office has wind chimes hanging from the ceiling right above your head. I just don't understand. Do they expect you to admire the wind chimes and ignore the stranger eyeing your downstairs? So, along with being confused about the wind chimes, my doctor came in with a high school girl and said, "This advanced placement student is interested in gynecology. Do you mind if she sits in on this exam?" I was 8 months pregnant at the time and thought, well, here go your future career plans, honey. Every damn time I get an exam from my doctor, just because he is fucking hot. He looks like he could be a model. Gorgeous blue eyes, salt and pepper hair, perfect skin tone, tall. My God, every time I see him, I imagine a porno scene playing out and I get a little wet when he examines me. And he always comments on it, something like, "It's always nice to have a little extra lubrication when I'm working down here." I had to have an ultrasound done once, but it wasn't the regular goo on the belly one. I guess it was the new high-tech ultrasound device. It looked like a dildo. So I'm laying there, stirrups and all, while my gyno and the ultrasound tech are lubing up this techie dildo, and I had no idea that they were only going to insert it a couple of inches in and then wiggle it. It was so awkward I couldn't stop myself from saying, "Well, the least you could do is stop teasing me, that's hot," when they asked how I was doing. I had to go for the first time when I was 13 because I had cysts. I was so scared and already in a lot of pain that I just sobbed hysterically the entire time. It didn't help that the doctor is very blunt and unsympathetic. They had to call my mom in to help keep me still. I'm still scared to death of that place and have a mild panic attack every time I have an appointment, and that was 8 years ago. After my pelvic exam, my doctor gave me a breast exam. I have a pretty good sized tattoo on my ribs anyways. During the exam, I hear her say, nice. It took me a good 30 seconds to realize she was talking about my tattoo, not my boobs. The gynecologist was examining me because I was having some discomfort with intercourse. His hand and finger were inside of me, and he accidentally said, "I can feel it's tight when I put my penis inside." I mean, finger! Poor thing, he is probably horrified when he thinks back to that moment. Personally, it's my favorite story. That is both horrifying and hilarious. Mine was when I was about 12 or 13. I just got my period and had to go to the emergency room twice as I had symptoms of appendicitis, but it wasn't appendicitis. Doctors were unsure and sent me to the gynecologist to figure out what was wrong. The gynecologist was a woman that my mom had gone to for years. I had to undergo the usual vaginal exam and it was already painful as hell. Then she tells me, "Now relax," and without a warning, forced her finger into my anus. It was so extremely painful, especially because I was so unprepared. She also couldn't figure out what happened, so she prescribed me a birth control pill and sent me on my way. The second I left the room, I started hysterically crying. Went back there years later as I was accompanying my mom to get some documents, and in the stairways I had a hysterical mental breakdown because I was so traumatized by what happened years ago. The birth control helped, and due to a friend having the same thing happen, I figured out the symptoms came from my ovulation, which is why the birth control worked. Anyway, I still am traumatized. Although the gynecologist is no longer practicing. Still can't enter that building, and I can't have anyone touch my anus during intercourse because I get shaky. When I actually had to go to the gynecologist again for an exam when I was 19 and started being sexually active, I went to see a male specifically and would have never gone to a woman again had he not retired. The woman that took over his office was extremely understanding and made sure to tell me exactly what she was doing. I still get shaky before my annual checkups as I know it will be a woman, but I make do. Another bad one I had was when I was 23 and got a terrible infection, as well as an inflammation in my Bartholin gland that caused a walnut-sized abscess in the entrance of my vagina. I couldn't walk, sit, or move without intense pain, so I went to see an emergency gynecologist. The first was a man, and he told me they'd have to surgically drain the abscess and either stay or come back in the morning for it. I went back in the morning to meet a different gynecologist in the hospital. A woman. She was really rough with me, ignored when I winced in pain, and told me to use eucalyptus serum to get rid of it. And that surgery was too much. I was kind of mad but thought I'd try. Well, as it turns out, it didn't help and got even worse. Took me 5 minutes to even get up from a chair. I was limping in slow motion. The next gynecologist had to find out how far inside the abscess went, so she poked around there while I was shaking and crying from pain. She tried to be more careful than the other, but Jesus Christ, that was probably the worst pain I've felt to this day. In the end, I had to have emergency surgery because I couldn't get up by myself anymore and was emotionally numb. But this was, once again, a reason for my trauma to flare up and have a really bad bias against female gynecologists. And that's it. Thank you for watching. What was your worst experience with a gynecologist? Write in the comments.